Radioactive wasps near nuclear site spark concerns in South Carolina. Imagine a world where nature itself becomes an unexpected guardian of nuclear secrets. Until now, in the heart of South Carolina's sprawling sandhills, a startling discovery has sparked both curiosity and concern. Wasp nests laced with radioactive traces, 10 times the federal safety threshold. But here's where it gets controversial. How did these insects become unwitting carriers of Cold War-era contamination? And what does it mean for the future of this historic nuclear site? Let's dive in. The incident unfolded in early July at the Savannah River Site, a Cold War relic spanning over 310 square miles, nearly 4 times the size of Washington, D.C., where radioactive waste has been stored for decades. Federal officials confirmed the discovery of 4 contaminated wasp nests, with the first found near tanks holding highly radioactive liquid waste. While authorities insist the situation is under control, watchdog groups like the Savannah River Site Watch are raising red flags. The biggest question remains: how did the wasps get exposed, and does that pathway still exist today? Asks Tom Clements, a vocal critic of the site's management. His frustration boils over. I'm mad as a hornet that the Department of Energy isn't explaining how the wasps got contaminated. Is there a leak we're being kept in the dark about? The DOE's response? A carefully worded statement downplaying the risk. According to Edwin DeShong, the site's environmental manager, the nests had very low levels of contamination, posing no threat to workers or residents. But this contradicts a July 22 report revealing the first nest exceeded federal limits by a factor of 10. The report attributes this to legacy contamination, a polite term for radioactive debris left over from the site's decades of operation. Yet the watchdogs aren't convinced. Legacy or not, these tanks are aging, Clements argues. Some have hairline cracks. We need to clean this up now. Let's break it down for clarity. The site currently houses 43 underground tanks holding 34 million gallons of radioactive sludge. These tanks, some over 60 years old, have already experienced minor leaks. The wasps, likely nesting in contaminated soil or sediment from cleanup efforts, became accidental markers of ongoing environmental risks. Dr. Catherine Higley, a nuclear science professor and president of the National Council on Radiation Protection, offers a more measured view. A small hotspot doesn't spell disaster, but it's a sign we need to dig deeper. They're probably already tracing the source, and it might be something subtle. So what's the real takeaway? The wasps aren't a danger to the public, but their presence highlights a deeper issue: aging infrastructure and the slow, costly process of nuclear site cleanup. And this is the part most people miss. The controversy isn't just about radiation. It's about transparency. Should the public have the right to know exactly how these wasps became contaminated, even if the risk seems low? What do you think? Is it enough to say no impact when the source remains a mystery? Share your take in the comments below. Radioactive wasps found near SC Nuclear Facility. SRS Wasp Nest Discovery. What if your worst sci-fi fears came to life? WJBF. Around here, we all know better than to mess with wasps. But what happens when a wasp nest gets tangled up in something far more dangerous? That's exactly what happened recently. And the story has everyone buzzing. It sounds bad. I just want to figure out how to get rid of it, said one concerned local after hearing the news. Even the BBC has picked up on this bizarre discovery. A wasp nest found at the Savannah River Site, SRS, a nuclear facility in South Carolina. But this isn't. Radioactive wasp nest found at nuclear waste site in South Carolina. What's the story? Imagine this. A wasp nest discovered at a nuclear waste site, except this one is radioactive. Yes, you read that right. In a bizarre twist that sounds more like science fiction than real life, officials at a former nuclear weapons production facility in South Carolina recently uncovered a wasp nest contaminated with dangerous levels of radiation. The discovery was made at the Savannah River Site, a sprawling government-owned facility that once played a major role in producing nuclear materials during the Cold War. Specifically, the nest was found on July 3rd near the F-Area Tank Farm, a location used to store vast quantities of liquid radioactive waste. According to a report released by the U.S. Department of Energy on July 22nd, the nest was not only radioactive, but exceeded federal safety limits by more than 10 times. But here's where it gets controversial. Officials claim the contamination came from old, leftover radioactive particles already present at the site, not from a recent leak or accident. In other words, they believe the wasps unknowingly built their home in a spot that had already been tainted by decades-old waste. Still, the fact that a wild animal nest could become so heavily contaminated raises serious questions about how thoroughly the area has been cleaned up. The Department of Energy said the nest was treated with spray, removed safely, and classified as radiological waste. Importantly, they emphasized that the surrounding ground and nearby areas showed no signs of contamination, and that there were no risks to workers, the public, or the environment. The agency concluded that no further action was necessary. The Savannah River mission completion, the private contractor managing the site, explained to the Aiken Standard that the nest was detected during routine monitoring. They followed standard procedures, spraying the nest and testing it for radiation. While the nest itself was contaminated, the agency noted that individual wasps likely carried far lower levels of radioactivity. Since wasps usually don't travel more than a few hundred yards from their nest, officials determined that any potential exposure would be localized. Still, not everyone is convinced. Tom Clements, the executive director of the watchdog group Savannah River Site Watch, told the Associated Press that he was furious the Department of Energy hadn't provided a clearer explanation. "I'm as mad as a hornet," Clements said, questioning whether there could be an undetected leak from one of the aging underground waste tanks. He also wondered why the agency hadn't been more transparent with the public about the possible source of the contamination. And this is the part most people miss. This isn't just about a single wasp nest. It's about the legacy of decades of nuclear production and whether the site has truly been decontaminated. The Savannah River Site, established in the early 1950s, spent over 40 years manufacturing plutonium and tritium for nuclear weapons. It wasn't until 1992, after the Cold War ended, that the site shifted its focus to environmental cleanup and research. The area where the nest was found, F-Area Tank Farm, contains 22 massive underground tanks made of carbon steel. Each tank can hold between 750,000 and 1.3 million gallons, or 2.8 to 5 million liters of radioactive sludge. That's enough to fill hundreds of Olympic-sized swimming pools. The condition of these tanks has long been a concern, especially as they age and corrosion becomes a growing risk. So what does this discovery really mean? On one hand, it could just be a strange but isolated incident, an unusual interaction between nature and old contamination. On the other hand, it might signal a deeper issue about how well the site is being monitored and whether hidden dangers still lurk beneath the surface. Here's our question for you. Should the discovery of a radioactive wasp nest trigger a broader investigation into possible leaks or overlooked contamination at nuclear waste sites? Or is it simply a freak occurrence that doesn't warrant alarm? Share your thoughts, because when it comes to nuclear safety, even the smallest clue could point to a much bigger problem.